A few days ago now, the long-anticipated Fangame, another Metroid 2 remake, was released. It had been in development for a really long time, and though fan projects like this typically fall by the wayside and never get released, AM2R maintained a slow, steady rate of updates over the last 8 years. Finally, in July, the AM2R blog added a 30-day countdown to the release of version 1.0. After 8 long years and many playable demos, it looked like this fan-made Metroid 2 remake was actually going to get finished. I had just finished my own 10-month video project, and you'd think that all I'd want to do from here on out is relax and play video games for a while, but honestly I've been too busy with post-production related things, like responding to YouTube comments and managing my blog. Honestly, that's fine by me, as that video has done considerably better than I would have ever dreamed. And while I may not have had the time or at least the energy to sink my teeth into something like AM2R, I still downloaded it, if only so I'd have a copy when the inevitable happened. A lot of people like to jump to the conclusion that fan games must be purged from the internet because they are illegal. I feel particularly well educated on this matter because when I was around 15 or 16 years old, I happened upon an internet community called the Sonic Fangames HQ, which, as the name implies, was dedicated around the idea of users making their own Sonic fan games using tools like ClickTeam Fusion and Game Maker. And I very quickly learned the kinds of opinions the mainstream public held about fan games, and most of them weren't very good. Rightfully so, it's easy to associate fan games with bootlegs and piracy, because it's a thin line that separates the two. Really, the only difference between a fan game and a pirated bootleg is that bootlegs are usually sold for money as part of a scam, and fan games are created by passionate fans who post them online for free. It was so prevalent that a year or two after joining the Sonic Fangames HQ, I wanted to try changing that stigma. So I launched something called the Sonic Amateur Games Expo, which for the sake of brevity will be referred to hereon as SAGE. It was an online-only event designed to celebrate Sonic fan games and show the world that they really weren't so bad. The thing to keep in mind here is that yes, fan games are actually illegal. But here's the catch. If fan games are illegal, then fan art is illegal, fan fiction is illegal, and even a lot of fan sites are illegal. Anything you do with somebody else's intellectual property without their official permission is technically illegal, because you are infringing on the copyrights they own. A huge portion of DeviantArt, fanfiction.net, and Tumblr all contain content that is technically illegal. 20 years ago or more, in the prehistoric internet, you actually used to see companies like Fox and Paramount go after harmless fan sites for The Simpsons or Star Trek and serve them cease and desist notices for copyright infringement. The fans creating these sites weren't doing anything more than paying tribute to something they loved and hoping to meet other fans with similar interests, and all they got for it was to be shut down. Fox and Paramount were well within their legal bounds to do that, and fair use laws are too fickle to really be much of a defense in a lot of these scenarios. So really, there wasn't anything anyone could do to stop them from shutting everything down. But eventually they stopped, completely of their own volition. So what happened? Well, they realized they were literally biting the hand that was feeding them, and telling fans to stop being fans. By militantly defending their intellectual property, they were developing a negative reputation for being too strict, and it was damaging the quality of the very same brands they were trying to protect. So they stopped, and the internet rejoiced. Which brings us back to the fan game versus bootleg argument. In the eyes of many, there was little to nothing separating the two, and that's where I wanted to come in with Sage, in order to shine a spotlight on the things that made the two different and celebrate a community that I cared very much about. And since then, the Sonic Amateur Games Expo has run for over 15 years and showcased literally hundreds of Sonic fan games with zero legal intervention from Sega. In fact, guys like Naoto Oshima have even given Q&A sessions during Sage, talking to Sonic Fangame creators about the process of making official Sonic games back on the Sega Genesis. Now, Sega is a different beast than somebody like Nintendo, and if how they handle their YouTube presence is anything to go by, Nintendo is way more militant about how their intellectual property gets used. But, speaking as somebody who released a Mario fan game to the tune of 500,000 downloads and never saw any negative repercussions, even Nintendo seems to be pretty lax about fan games, as long as you follow 3 golden rules. 1. Never try to profit from your fan project. This means no Kickstarters, no Patreons, or anything else where you would exchange money for goods with regards to what you're doing with Nintendo's IP. 2. Never attempt to port or otherwise remake something Nintendo is already selling for money. Your high-def Unreal Engine remake of Super Mario 64 could take sales away from the real Super Mario 64, and that's a really, really bad thing in Nintendo's eyes. 3. Make it abundantly clear that you are not affiliated or associated with Nintendo. I've heard that sometimes companies like Nintendo get tech support calls about fan games, which could be considered a waste of company resources, which means your fan game could be costing them money. So just don't let that confusion happen. The overall concept communicated by these rules is this: don't step on Nintendo's toes, and Nintendo won't step on yours. If you go back and look at the fan projects Nintendo has sent copyright takedown notices to in the last few years, every single one of them breaks at least one of these 3 rules. True enough, so does another Metroid 2 remake, and unsurprisingly, I woke up to news today that Nintendo is issuing takedown notices to places hosting the game. I don't necessarily blame Nintendo for shutting the game down. Again, don't step on Nintendo's toes and they won't step on yours. The real Metroid 2 is being sold on the Virtual Console, which means a shiny upgraded version with enhanced graphics and better gameplay negatively impacts Nintendo's bottom line. Of course they would shut that down. But AM2R has been in development for 8 years. And in those 8 years, there were a dozen demos with many hours of gameplay. They ran a countdown timer for 30 whole days leading up to the final release of the completed fan game. Nintendo had so much time to stop these guys before the game came out, and they waited until after it was already released, and on Metroid's 30th anniversary no less. Nintendo is literally invalidating 8 long years of legitimately hard work by multiple people. It's their legal right to shut it down, but as we previously covered, following the exact letter of the law is not always the solution. And in previous scenarios, Nintendo usually issues copyright takedowns before a project even reaches completion. Sometimes they issue takedown notices before a project even begins production at all, flushing thousands of hours of work down the toilet after the game was completed looks downright rude. Second of all, Metroid fans aren't feeling a lot of love right now anyway. After Metroid Other M and now Metroid Prime Federation Force, Nintendo seems to be pushing the Metroid franchise into the same sort of deep dark hole that doomed the Star Fox franchise, where they're going to do everything except what the fans really want out of the series. Nintendo doesn't know what to do with Metroid anymore, and their experiments aren't really pleasing existing Metroid fans. AM2R represents those same Metroid fans making exactly what they want: another classic Metroid game. This actually goes back to my time spent at Sonic Fangames HQ. That community seemed to have started because from 1994 to 1999, there were a lot of Sonic fans and not a lot of real Sonic games. So, those Sonic fans took matters into their own hands and began making their own Sonic games. There's a pretty clear parallel here with AM2R. The last real Metroid game was released 9 years ago, and the last 2D Metroid game was released 12 years ago. Metroid fans are merely filling in the gaps that Nintendo themselves are neglecting. And it feels particularly funny in the face of something like Sonic Mania. The developers behind that project are Christian Whitehead, Headcanon, and Pagoda West Games. Those guys are from the same Sonic fan gaming community that I was a part of. Both Christian Whitehead and Headcanon showed their Sonic fan games for multiple years at Sage, the Sonic fan gaming expo I founded. Sega realized these guys had talent, and essentially their fan games became part of their resume to working on the official thing. And now Sonic Mania has more people excited about Sonic the Hedgehog than they've been in almost 20 years. What's Nintendo doing? Not catering to a desperate fan base by trying to stuff a genie back in its bottle. Well, it's obviously a little too late for that. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, consider subscribing. If you like the words I've been saying a lot more over at my personal blog. You can also find my professional writing at tsszernews.com and bltn.net. A huge thank you goes out to all my Patreon supporters, because without their efforts, videos like this might not be possible. So thank you Logan, Connor, Brandon of Jump Kick Punch, Nolan, Setsune Weifel, Thomas, Tom B, Matt, Anders, both Ryans, Keith, Christopher, and Rose. If you would like to join their ranks, and you really should, then just head on over to patreon.com/blazehedgehog. For just $1 or $2 a month, you can get exclusive podcasts, secret videos, and other behind-the-scenes content. And even if you don't pledge any money, check out my Patreon anyway, as I've archived some free content over there too. Once again, that's patreon.com/blazehedgehog. And once again, thank you very much for watching my video.